With the massive embargo drop for Total War Warhammer 3, we finally get a first look at an epic battle at the gates of the Brass Citadel itself, deep within the lands of Khorne, within the realm of chaos. This epic confrontation has given way to a ton of new gameplay reveals for Warhammer 3, giving us a look at a sample of both the Kislev and Khorne unit rosters, as well as some other mechanics that hopefully might be making their way into a reworked siege engine that is supposed to be coming with the launch of Game 3 sometime later this year. In this video today, I want to discuss my picks for some of the most exciting changes coming to the next installment in Total War Warhammer. Some things to hit up front: this list is not ordered by importance, just kind of grouped by what I feel fit together for the narrative of discussion. Also, this is an early access build of the game, so there are plenty of jankety animations that you might see, with lots of missing sync animations and the such. Everything is subject to change prior to launch, so just kind of keep that in mind. Another caveat is that this was a press build, so all the units we fought were greatly reduced in hit points, so if you see any Khorne units with low HP, it was by intention, unfortunately. If you'd like to jump ahead or just see what's in this list, you can navigate to the chapters in the timeline or the description. Also, if you have not yet pre-ordered Warhammer 3, you can do so using the link in my description to my Nexus store. They secure these Steam keys directly from the developer and hand them to you. Also, as of May 14th, I will receive 100% of the margin versus the 50% I typically get. It's just a great way to support the channel and helps me out a ton. Otherwise, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment below. As they say, it is hugely important to the dreaded YouTube algorithm. But let's get started on my picks for the top 10 epic Warhammer 3 features. The first one on our list is the entire basis for the battle play today. It's a new mode called Survival that will be added into Warhammer 3. In this scenario, we clearly play as Lady Katarin of Kislev as she surges towards the gates of the Brass Citadel to stop the incursions of chaos into the mortal realms. Now, we unfortunately do not yet have a ton of clarity of how this plays into the grand scheme of the campaign. But the developers did say that these survival mode battles will be taking place at unique points in the storyline, rather than, peppered through the entirety of it, making it a bit more of a change of pace versus a constant battle mode. It's essentially a hybrid tower defense where you fight hordes of Khorne units per each icon you capture. As you capture the hard points or icons and defeat foes, you gather a resource called supplies, which you then can use in one of three ways. For one, you can send reinforcements into the battlefield so that you can bolster your forces, each icon granting higher tier units. You also have the ability to send your existing units back to fully recover without losing veterancy. Secondly, you can also spend supplies towards upgrades on each of your units, giving them bronze, silver, gold, weapons, shields, and armor. You can see from the video that some of these scale up very well at the top end, granting physical resistance and weapon strength bonuses. Lastly, you can access replenishments, which will heal the selected unit, recover their vigor, replenish ammo, win some magic reserve, morale, whatever you want to help restore on the unit in question. Although this was a watered down, easier experience, it was still a 40-minute slog fest that was intense from start to finish, where I was trying to keep each icon held while I pushed deeper towards the Brass Citadel. But there are two features that helped in holding the line, the first of which we'll talk about next. Similar to Three Kingdoms, Warhammer 3 grants us this new barricade system throughout the battle. Around the map are set hard points that you can construct barricades and towers, more on that later. These barricades present you with one of 4 obstacles or boons to help with stemming the tide of the worshippers of Khorne. Each of the barricades has a supply cost associated with it, and each one helps in a different way. When selected, the barricade will auto-construct across 10 seconds and can be upgraded to a different barricade at any time. First is the platform. This grants units a 20% range bonus in a 32-meter radius around the barricade and allows you to mount the wall, shooting at the oncoming horde just like a siege. Next is the monument. This is different from the platform in that it is purely a melee attack and leadership buff for your units. There is nothing that blocks the path for the enemy, so this is better used next to another barricade that helps you hold the line. Third, and my favorite on holding the line, is the trap, which is a minus 15% reduction to the enemy's speed and melee attack. A trap house is also where you buy it. Never mind. The trick here is to build this and then fight on it, using it to tar pit the attacker while it slows incoming units for your ranged soldiers to pick apart. Lastly, we have the simple blocker. This one has twice the health of the platform at 10k health and grants missile resistance of 15%. So this is great for herding units into a bottleneck you've created with your towers, units, and traps. Speaking of, let's talk some more about those towers. And you need towers for a tower defense, right? Number 8 is all about those bad boys. And just like the barricades, the towers are set across the map at hard points with 4 options to choose from. They will auto-construct across 10 seconds and can be swapped or even deleted to refund you some supplies in a pinch. Each tier of tower gets stronger and stronger with differing bonuses and penalties applied to the enemy. The first is a basic arrow tower with 250 range and a solid reload speed of 2 seconds with 50 damage and 20 AP. The second tier is an advanced arrow tower, and honestly I think it's the strongest of the lot because you get 10 more damage and AP, but you also get a 36% speed penalty to anything the tower hits, allowing it to really rip stuff apart. Third is the dreaded piercing tower, more of a magical mortar tower if you want to think of it like that, with high AP damage and a splash damage, but with a 4-second reload time. To balance that out, you also get a sundering armor effect, reducing armor by 30 of any enemy it hits. Lastly, the best of the best is the magic tower. This has near 0 AP, but also reduces the speed of things by 36% and does a massive 550 damage. You can see that each one of these towers is highly characteristic with individual strengths and weaknesses. But in my experience, the tier 2 arrow tower just reigned supreme. It was able to shoot so fast by comparison to tiers 3 and 4, as well as slows things down. In conjunction, the arrows tracked better than the lumbering magical blasts of the others. Either way, it makes some amazing cinematic shots as units charge at your choke points with huge explosions ripping them apart in droves. Switching gears a bit, number 7 brings us to the newly revamped UI, and every Total War does something or another with the UI. Even looking from game 1 to 2, we got some things streamlined and added. We get the very same here. I'm going to be doing this entry a bit more low tech so I can really drill down on what I'm talking about, but here's a lovely picture of the new Chaos Warriors. More on them later. But let's just look at the unit info card starting at the top. So we have all the normal elements we get from previous iterations, but any debuffs, buffs, or persistent bonuses that would disable in the event of low leadership or what have you are displayed in the upper right corner, giving you the ability to see what's on the unit quickly. Moving to the left of the unit size icon, we get the corresponding tier of the unit. So these warriors are a tier 2 unit, meaning, of course, there's only other options above and below them. So let me just kind of zoom in a little bit more over here and we'll move just again so you can just see that tier 2 right there. Now, at the bottom of the info card, we also have abilities. Well, you see all these small blips down here, right? Rather than mousing over them like in previous iterations, I can click the little plus button here for abilities and it will display them all in a list, making it far easier to read for, say, hybrid lords that have spells and abilities and innate bonuses. Moving over to the unit cards themselves, these little shields denote whether or not a unit is braced, so you know for sure if they will be reducing a charge bonus from an enemy. And there's other things like, hey, it shows that this unit is losing a fight and some other stuff that you'll be able to see once we jump into a battle. But lastly, the Winds of Magic gauge over here now, zoom in just a little bit more and we'll go down over to this corner here. It fills like an hourglass, and once it fills, your Winds of Magic reserve will replenish one of your Winds of Magic, giving you a visual representation of the game's equivalent of mana being replenished for you. These things are minor, but they make for a much more enjoyable and easier to decipher experience when it comes to a lot of the nuance of Total War. Moving on to number 6, we get juicy with some new units, and namely the Chaos Demons. Finally, we are getting access to the other portion of the Chaos roster, the Demons. These burly big badass bronze boys are going to be seemingly the antagonist of the campaign for Warhammer 3. We've yet to get examples of the other gods, but count on the presence of Tzeentch, Nurgle, Slaanesh, and as you can see, the Skullmaster himself, Khorne. In our gameplay, we got to preview a lot of different units from the Khorne roster. Bloodletters reap through your Zargard as their fell blades clash into Kislevite steel, their wild gibbering and shouts echoing through the battlefield. Further, we get exalted bloodletters that are elevated and stronger versions of their base bros. The entire Khorne roster is represented from the Chaos Demons 8th edition army book, as well as the Skull Cannons, a mobile artillery piece, and Skull Crushers and Blood Crushers on their Dreadnoughts of Khorne. Then, of course, there's the real Chads, the Bloodthirsters, with the mighty exalted Bloodthirster as the ultimate opponent of the battle. What's also nice is that we get Khorne versions of generic units such as Chaos Spawns, Warhounds, and Furies. This adds a lot of nice flexibility into the roster without pigeonholing it and gives those units a bit of flavor. The Spawns, for example, having much stronger melee combat stats, sacrificing defense in lieu of sheer weapon strength. All these complement the other new Chaos units, God-specific mortal units, and this is something that Total War Warhammer fans have been asking for since Game 1. Finally, it's alive, and it's alive in all the bloody and gory goodness that is Khorne. Now, we don't get to dive into a ton of different variations here, but from the gameplay that we were all given, there are 3 types of Chaos Warriors. This variation is represented in even the cinematic trailer. Your generic Chaos Warrior with axe and shield makes itself shown in the first portions of the battle, and their gigantic cornate crested helms and glowing eyes with skulls hanging from belts makes any Khorne fan excited to Slaaneshi levels. Then we get the Halberd variant with massive AP and anti-large damage coming out of this frenzied unit. What's nice is that there's a lot of character imbued into the mortal units. The Chaos Warriors get immune to psychology and frenzy since they're cornate, making it obvious how their quote-unquote mark, as it were, transfers from tabletop into Total War. Also, they're all armored with 100 armor. That's pretty beefy, and we haven't even seen the chosen version of these guys. Then lastly, we get the blender units of the warriors with dual weapons, coming in with a massive 58 weapon strength and anti-infantry. These are going to burn through chaff. With all that being said, we have no idea what a Khorne hero or lord looks like, let alone if there are Khorne versions of the Norskin or Marauder units in the base roster. Needless to say, this has me beyond excited about the other gods' mortal units and what they'll look like, from the sleek look of Slaanesh to the corpulence of Nurgle. There's so many directions Creative Assembly can possibly take this. Number 4 moves us over to Kislev to talk about Bear Cavalry, and what a sight to behold they are on the battlefield. These things are absolutely destructive. You don't get access to them until the latter portion of the fight, but that's for a good reason. This unit is a powerhouse. They're massive bears for one, so they're going to be destructive, but think of them as even scarier demogryphs from the Empire roster. A chunky 110 weapon strength with both armor piercing and anti-large on this variant makes for a particularly punishing tier 3 monstrous cav unit. In addition, they have a high melee defense of 32, great attack at 46, and a shocking speed of 75. They also cause fear. These bears were amazing fast reactionary units that I could pull from one side of the conflict to the other whenever a Bloodthirster presented itself, or any other hard target that needed the AP and anti-large of the war bears to come to the fore. Now, we don't just get war bears. There's also the Little Grom, a gigantic cannon drawn by, well, 2 war bears. This thing has a chunky 450 range with 432 weapon strength, so it gives you so much needed destructive artillery power and plenty of melee power from the bears themselves. Lastly, the cinematic trailer showed off a variant of war bears with lances, hinting at a possible shock cavalry variant just like the demogryphs get, or perhaps a lower tier one, as the bears in the trailer didn't have the massive tusks on them that these do. We've yet to find out, but count on plenty of bear riding badassery from Kislev. Since we're on the subject of bears, the Elemental Bear is the third subject on our list, and it is the new centerpiece unit for the Kislev roster. This thing is a massive, ponderous ice elemental bear that represents the raw fury of the people of Kislev. This thing is huge. It stands taller than a Bloodthirster and has the grand scale similar to the Dread Saurian we got in the Lizardman roster a year or two back. But it is just a Goliath. Physical resistance, terror, unbreakable, all are special attributes that the Elemental Bear has at its disposal. In addition, the stat line is beefy with magic and frostbite attacks and a punishing 600 armor-piercing weapon strength that will help you swat your way through those pesky bloodletters like gnats. The only downside is the very slow speed of 48 and equally as low melee defense of 22, meaning you're going to want to protect this chungus on the battlefield. But he has an answer for units that are out of range from him. The Elemental Bear has a glorious Frost Breath attack, much like the Regiment of Renown Hydra from the Dark Elves that delivers a ton of damage right in the face of the enemy if they decide to remain out of range from the terrifying might of Kislev's chief god Ursus made manifest. This also begs the question of what or any other possible monstrous creatures in the Kislev roster we've yet to see, such as the Hawks of Misha or perhaps a feral quote-unquote version of the Warbear, but that is yet to be seen. Now, it wouldn't be a new faction without a new lore, and number 2 brings us to the Lore of Ice, the newest lore to be added to Total War Warhammer 3, and it has a lot of really good spells in it. The Lore of Ice has some very interesting spells in the tabletop, such as Form of the Frost Fiend, but we don't see those represented here. Instead, we get a lore that has a lot of slowing and very punishing effects, especially Heart of Winter, the pinnacle spell in the lore. Going through the entire lore here, the first spell is Frostblade, which grants a unit both a 25% weapon and armor-piercing damage buff, and 24 melee attack, which can be overcast to double the weapon strength bonuses. The second spell, Ice Maiden's Kiss, is a conical breath attack that does a decent amount of damage to low armored foes and can be overcast to do additional AP damage. Third, Death Frost is a souped up version of Spirit Leech, delivering 1800 damage across 27 seconds, which is very strong and probably one of the best spells in the lore. Next, we have Ice Sheet, which will slow down everything in a 55-meter radius by 48%, allowing you to really pour on with your Streltsy or with your Kossars. And then Crystal Sanctuary is a nice 66% damage resistance buff, but the unit in question can't move for 35 seconds. The best spell in the entire lore, and one that melts face, no pun intended, is Heart of Winter. It has 4 phases that activate over 8 seconds each, and at the base tier, it slows down the enemy speed by 15% and does 24 damage over 8 seconds. But at the top end, it will slow speed by 60% and do 88 damage over 8 seconds. As you can see, this spell can take an entire blob of units and delete them before it even hits the 4th phase. It's one of the strongest Vortex spells and has a really awesome effect as it grows in strength. Number 1 on our list goes to the Tzarina of Kislev, Katarin, the daughter of Boris Boka, and she is an extremely well done character. The character model is amazing, the voice acting, animations, just everything. To be fair, the entirety of Kislev is just really well done, but she's a very strong character nonetheless. Now, we don't know what her mount options are, but we do know a bit about her abilities, as you can see from the unit card. Just looking at her raw stats, she has a strong amount of melee attack at 56 that is both magic and does frostbite, but she is still a wizard-based character, and as such, she has the typical 440 weapon strength and a paper-thin 6 armor. Now, that might be a construct of this build, so be wary and it's kind of take that with a grain of salt, but as far as her abilities go, she gets the Kislev passive of By Our Blood, increasing leadership by 16 as long as the unit is above 50% health. She gets the new effect called Wounds, reducing a target's weapon strength and speed, coupling that with Frostbite to make for a particularly nice slowing effect on anyone she swings on. There is, of course, the Lore of Ice passive that grants 15 armor and 12 missile block chance for 11 seconds anytime a Lore of Ice spell is cast. And remember, this is map wide and will apply to your entire army, not just Katarin. To offset her massive armor deficit, the Tzarina has the Crystal Cloak, giving her 22% physical resistance and a devastating bound ability called Frostfang. This spell has a bit of a wind-up, but when it goes off, a massive glaciers just jut out of the ground and do 15 damage and 14 AP damage per second in a 15-meter radius. Coupling this with any of her Lore of Ice abilities, you'll find that Tzarina Katarin is a great annihilating force that can just destroy hordes. One last note about Katarin is her symbol is the old Lore of Ice symbol from the army books, and her faction is Katarin's Expedition. So we've yet to see a faction with the Bear of Kislev banner, and this possibly hints towards Boris maybe coming back, or we don't really know. Only time will tell until we get a chance to find out more. Now, our one honorable mention here is not a feature, but it is a glorious bit of memeage from Creative Assembly. The new Streltsy unit, one that we'll discuss in our Kislev roster video, have an idle animation. And that animation is a glorious Slav squat. I can't wait for the mod that adds vodka and cigarettes to these units to give them plenty of Soviet fighting power. Davai, bratan! With that, it brings our list to a close. There's still so much to show off across the Kislev roster, the Khorne roster, and some other discussion pieces that I'll be talking about in the coming days. So please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to get more news on Warhammer 3 as it is revealed from Creative Assembly. I have some lore videos coming out too that will accompany the marketing coverage, so be on the lookout for those. But share with me in the comment section below some of the aspects of the gameplay you've seen that you're really excited about. I'm very hyped for the game's launch later in the year, so don't forget to hit up that Nexus store if you've yet to pre-order a copy. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.